Innovations in biology and technology. In specific, we'll be discussing personal genomics. The agenda of this presentation is we're going to be discussing the purpose of personal genomics, background information, we'll have a discussion about the specific points, a conclusion, and then I will go over my references. The purpose of this presentation is we will first review what is DNA and what do genes do, how data is obtained for personal genomics, what are the risks and benefits of these services, and why some are against it. What do genes and what does DNA do? DNA essentially carries out our genetic information and determines our traits and the traits that we will pass down to our offspring. This can include sex, eye color, height, and potential health conditions such as cancer, Huntington's disease, or ADHD, as cited by Randerson 2008. The central dogma theory is a concept that essentially describes how genetic information is copied and translated in eukaryotes. DNA makes copies of itself via replication. That DNA is then transcribed by RNA, which is then read by messenger RNA or mRNA, and subsequently proteins are created. These proteins are called functional proteins, and they are essential in the formation of functional life. What are personal genomics? Genomes are the genetic recipes that contain all of the information that is needed for an organism to be made and sustained. This includes all humans and animals. Personal genomics, as described by Mountain 2013, is the analysis and interpretation of information from an individual's genome. There are multiple companies that offer personal genomics testing. However, one of the most popular companies is called 23andMe. So 23andMe, and how do they do it? This company began in their research in 2006. They provided genetic testing for over 1 million customers. They collect samples via DNA through saliva samples that they send direct to consumer. So you go online, you order their test, and then they send it to you. You'll give the sample, and then when you send it back to the company, they use a single nucleotide polymorphism technology to digitize your sample, and then they cross-reference with over 254 diseases and conditions. These tests rely on algorithms and pattern recognition to draw conclusions about health and ancestral backgrounds, as cited by Letzer 2018. A brief overview of the 23andMe timeline. As previously stated, in 2006, the company began offering direct-to-consumer online genetic testing. In August of 2013, 23andMe began running a widely popular commercial with the slogan, "Change what you can, manage what you can't." This was one of the paramount cornerstones of where they became an incredibly popular company. And then shortly after, in November of 2013, the company was halted by the FDA to stop all production of genetic testing as their service was not yet FDA approved. It should be noted that in this time, the company did continue to offer services for ancestral background, but they did not at that time offer health-related conditions and diagnoses potential from DNA. February of 2015, 23andMe received FDA approval. But then in December of 2019, the Pentagon advised all military and Department of Defense members to not purchase genetic testing services for fear of data being leaked or stolen. And this is something that we'll go into later. Some of the pros and cons about using 23andMe. Some of the pros are that customers can be made aware of significant health risks and conditions, as cited by Rimmer 2012. These conditions can help guide individuals in lifestyle choices. And there is a potential to revolutionize personalized medicine and pharmacology, meaning medications. Some of the big cons of these services is that research supports a lower predictive ability than what is being advertised to consumers. Essentially meaning that though 23andMe makes a lot of claims about their reliability and the accuracy of their DNA testing, there have been a lot of studies that show that their algorithms oftentimes are not as accurate as they are claiming. At its core, it is a massive data gathering agency, which poses a significant privacy risk. So now let's discuss why many people are against using 23andMe. One of the biggest reasons was that the Pentagon did advise against it. In a very viral and public interview with National Public Radio, a Pentagon representative discouraged all active duty and DoD members from using 23andMe services. This viral discouragement began a deep mistrust in the use of personal genomic services. There are millions of customers that use this service. As of 2019, a study that was conducted by the Michigan Institute for Technology found that it was estimated to hold the genetic information of over 3.5 million people. While this is not inherently a bad thing, it poses a pretty significant security risk, and this is why a lot of people choose not to do any sort of DNA testing. The data can then be abused for commercial use. This is something that is cited on the 23andMe website that says 23andMe reserves the right to use your personal information, including your genome, to inform you about events and to try and sell you services and products. This is something that a lot of people took issue with because although people were interested in their genetic background and people wanted to have information about what their DNA could potentially reveal to them about health conditions or their ancestral backgrounds, a lot of people took issue with how commercialized and consumerist this company actually was. The popularity of at-home DNA testing. So this is a graph that represents the three common companies in which people used to do genetic testing at home. So Ancestry DNA was a really popular one. 23andMe, which is the center graph, um, is the one that represents the previous slide of several million people using this service. As these companies continue to increase in popularity and volume of storage, the great security and privacy risks become increased. The reason that I personally would not do any sort of genetic testing at home, the biggest reason is because the Pentagon did advise against it. I am active duty military, so even though they didn't say that we couldn't do it, it is something that they strongly advised against, and their reasons were legitimate. Being that it was such a massive data gathering agency that poses a pretty significant risk for millions of people, and it was better to just err on the side of caution. So that is why they advised against it. So that was one of my big reasons. The other reason is that I do question the reliability. They use algorithms and pattern recognition that they formulated through their own company. So there is no way to completely fact check whether or not their algorithms and their pattern recognitions are legitimate. They can make a lot of claims and they can support it in a lot of ways, but because it's hard to know if they're being completely correct in a lot of the information that they're spreading, I personally feel that there is a large deficit of reliability. And then the final reason is that I don't think that you should make a problem when there isn't one. A lot of people reached out to these services because they didn't have any information about their background. One of their big marketing strategies was to market towards people who are adopted or don't know anything about their ancestry or people that don't know a lot about their family's medical conditions. Um, However, again, tying back into the reliability, just because their algorithms suggest that a person could be potentially at risk for something like Huntington's disease, which is a terminal disease that at this time doesn't have a cure, it would be difficult for me to support somebody getting genetic testing done through a consumer-based company that at its core is based in trying to make money and trying to sell products to people and feel confident that they have my health in mind. Um, So, in conclusion, if you are going to do genetic testing, you should be aware of the risks, the security risk, the risk of being given information about your genetic background or your ancestral background that is not necessarily completely accurate, and ensure that you're being tested for the right reasons because of that. If you do have any concerns about privacy or concerns about massive data leaks, then be sure that the reasons that you're getting genetic testing is not because of just a curiosity that could potentially put you at risk for a privacy breach. And then finally, when in doubt, you should always consult a medical professional. If you do use the 23andMe service and there is some evidence that they provide to you that says that you are at risk for certain health conditions, as previously described, Huntington's disease or ADHD, this is not a diagnosis and it shouldn't be something that you then base your life around. It should be something that if you feel confident in it and you feel that there may be some justification behind the testing, then you should consult a medical professional. These final slides have all of my references. I used a lot of references for this assignment just because there's so much information out there about genetic testing. Because 23andMe does have FDA approval now, there's a lot more information out there about their reliability, and it's something that you can look into further. This is my second reference page because, again, I used a lot of references. So thank you for listening to my presentation.